So we've been talking together about different kinds of conflict and a leader's role. The first kind was conflict that you observe. The second kind of conflict is conflict that you generate. There's times when you need to say something that or do something that's going to create conflict. And if you don't believe this is very Christian, go back and read the Gospels. Because there were times when Jesus needed to initiate conflict. There's other times when Jesus had to quell conflict. But one of the kinds of conflict that exists is conflict you need to generate. And the first rule we need to talk about here is that initiating conflict doesn't make you a jerk. Initiating conflict doesn't make you unchristian. Initiating conflict doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you right, but there are moments when it is appropriate to the role or to the relationship for me to initiate conflict. And that's part of what it means to be in relationship, to be honest with each other. We've talked before about how the delayed damage of mixed messages. How if we have mixed messages, what that does is it creates chaos. And that the solution to mixed messages is to make it discussable. Well, oftentimes when I'm going to make something discussable, the whole reason it wasn't discussable is because it might cause conflict. I know you don't want to hear it, but I'm bringing it up anyway. One of the things that you can do is pre-legitimate the idea of initiating conflict. One of the ways to do that is to talk through with your people the whole danger of mixed messages. Get people to have in their back pocket the vocabulary that mixed messages cause chaos. And the idea that making something discussable is a way of avoiding mixed messages. And what that does is it legitimates this word discussable. So for example, in my family, my wife and I knew that mixed messages were dangerous, and so we would often say to each other, can I make something discussable? And that was a way of saying, can I say something that might cause conflict, but I'm trying to do it in such a way that we don't have mixed messages, and I want us to work on this together. We've talked about no conflict, no honesty. It's a way of saying, can I be honest with you in such a way that we're going to work on a problem together? And so we would just say, that would be code word. Can I make it discussable of, let's sit and talk about something where I'm getting mixed message. And that was actually really helpful. But I didn't realize how helpful until we had teenagers. And my daughters grew up not knowing that that was abnormal. And so they would come to us. You know, instead of throwing a tantrum, my 15-year-old would come to me and say, can I make something discussable? And that would say, I want to bring something up that I think is going to cause conflict, but I want us to talk about it together. And we would go and we'd sit down together on the couch or on her bed, and we would sit down and we would say, okay, my appropriate response as a parent to my child saying, can I make it discussable, is to say yes, and then say, let's find a space that I can listen carefully to you. And I'm going to then listen. In other words, it's a way of saying I want to be listened to. Now, if I'm a manager, if I'm a leader, if I'm a boss, if I'm in some way where I have some kind of authority, I want to pre-legitimate this idea of discussability so that someone can come to me and say, can I make something discussable? And then the first time that happens, I'm going to say over and over again to everybody, I love the fact that this person did it. And I'm going to welcome the conflict, because what it's saying is, I would rather have honest conversation than have mixed messages. And we have the honest conversation, and in so doing, we get further along. But what I have to do then is over and over again to validate and say, I'm so thrilled that you made this discussable. Because at some point, I'm going to have to go to somebody else and say, can I make this discussable? Now, the hardest thing to do is not to go to somebody that works for you, where you have authority over them. And it's not to go to somebody who is an equal to you. The hardest is to go to somebody who has authority over you, and you say to them, I'd like to make something discussable. I'd like to talk together about something that you're going to find uncomfortable. And so I don't walk in the door and say, hi, I'd like to make things uncomfortable. Let's have a conversation. And if we haven't legitimated the language of discussability, what do I do in that moment? What I do is I go and I start talking about the mixed messages. I say, you know, we're trying to work on this thing together. And I think that you've told me A, and I think that you've told me B. And unfortunately, I see those in conflict with each other. You probably don't, otherwise you wouldn't have told me to do them both. So I want to make sure that I can do my job well. And so can we talk together about how I can do my job well and to accomplish both A and B? And if we decide that A and B aren't possible together, then let's decide what's more important or how we're going to do this. But I want to be sure to do the job that you have asked me to do. So what I'm doing is I'm going to my boss and I'm saying, I want to do what you've told me to do. No boss is going to complain about that. And then I'm going to say, okay, here's what I think you've said, and here's what I think you've said. And I'm making sure that I understand it. But I'm putting all the impetus on me. I'm the one that's going to have to change. Now, eventually it may well be that they have to change, but I don't get to decide that for them. All I can do is say, I've presently got a mixed message, and I would like to understand it so that I can accomplish what you asked me to do. So the second kind of conflict is conflict that you generate.